Welcome to the Esoteric Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle. I'm here with our other lovely host, Megan. We'll introduce ourselves in a moment. This is episode 1.
So bear with us.
Yeah. We just spent the last hour trying to figure out the microphones. So hopefully our production quality improves as time goes on.
8 Zoom invites later.
Right. So, yeah, we want to start with just kind of an introduction to who we are. I guess I'll start since this is all my crazy idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, my name's Kyle. I work as a kind of a personal coach in a few areas of specialty. One being just general health and wellness coaching. That's what my certification is in. And this is working with people just to facilitate behavior change of some kind to improve their health. And, this can pretty broad in scope of what, kinds of things we can work on. But especially when you look at health as, from a holistic perspective. Other areas I work in are chronic pain recovery coaching. So this is the same idea, we're working on behavior change, but more specifically towards, getting out of chronic pain. And this is looking at pain from a perspective that it's coming from the brain rather than something structurally wrong in the body. And I'm sure we'll do some episodes on that later on. And then I also work around psychedelics. So, you see a lot of these clinical trials going on right now. Psychedelics are being used therapeutically to treat all kinds of different things. And people are taking notice of that. Like, hey, I have that thing. I have this wrong with me. And, they want to treat themselves in a way. So I seek to kind of help people prepare how to do that on their own safely and maximizing their potential to have a positive therapeutic experience, and then working with them on the integration work following that experience. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in some episodes as well, because when I tell people what I do, that's always the aspect that, gets the most questions, the most interest, just because it's so different. So Megan is my wife, who for some reason agreed to do this with me.
Reluctantly.
I had recorded a couple episodes on my own with just me. That was my original intention. And I found myself to be, boring to listen to for any extended period of time. So I wanted to bring someone else on to kind of have a more conversational kind of flow to this. And I thought, I love having these types of conversations with her anyway. So yeah, I drug her into this. So I'll let her introduce herself.
Like you said, my name is Megan. I am his wife, and reluctantly was drug into this.
Ouch.
Okay. You usually complain that I have too much on my plate now, so you're just adding to it. Thank you. We've been married for a very long time. We've been married for 17 years. I've been with you longer than I haven't at this point in life. And I am a hairstylist, and I have been for about 8 years now. And being in that field has taken a toll on my health, and I'm trying to use my husband and his certifications and abilities in a free way, thank goodness, to help me with that. So I did some thinking and giving a outside perspective on what you do, and from a person who struggles with different mind, body, and soul issues, and give that input on this end because, like you said, you can get going and be a little boring. So I'm here to give some of the comic relief and I guess the layperson's view on what you do and what we deal with every day. And so, yeah, I'm the comic relief, I guess. God help us.
But yeah, I definitely want that perspective of more representation of, the average listener as well. And,
And a woman, from a woman's point of view as well.
absolutely, absolutely. Because I think health generally is more difficult for women. But yeah, just, ask those questions in the show that the average person might ask. Like, it all makes sense to me, but when I say things that don't make sense to anyone else, your job is to catch that and help ask me to clarify it.
Because then that's when people start glossing over and tuning out. I've done that a time or two.
And the perspective of someone who, struggles with some of this stuff.
I've got a laundry list.
A lot of this stuff isn't easy for a lot of people, and that's part of the problem. And we'll get into a lot of that today, actually. But it's easy to say, from the expert perspective, what it takes to be healthy. Just do these things, and
it's just that easy. It's just that easy. Just do it. Okay.
But for the majority of people, that's not the case. There are real difficulties involved. And, as a coach, that's really what I help people to get through. Because at the end of the day, we all know how to be healthy. We all know we need to eat a proper diet. We all know we need to, work in physical activity. We need to take care of our minds. We all know this stuff. But how do you transfer that knowledge to action?
It's a balance. It's finding that balance and overcoming yourself. And that's when people ask me what you do. And I say a health and wellness coach. I'm like, what's that? And I kind of akin it to kind of like life coaching, because the way I have found to explain this as easily as possible is you kind of work mind, body, soul. You really do. It's not just when you think that you're like, oh, you like a nutritionist. No. And I can attest to that. There's so, like you said, we would get into it more, but when you're working on trying to be healthier or do this or deal with chronic conditions, there is that mental aspect that goes with it. And that's the hardest part to overcome, not the physical portion, not eating better or doing this or that. It is putting that all together. And that is a huge part of it. So,
yeah. And, as I've gotten into this more and more, that's exactly what I have found is, when I first became a health coach, it's like, oh, we're going to talk about diet and exercise with people. It's like, yeah, we do that a little bit, but it's more, what are the mental roadblocks
yes,
that are preventing people from doing these basic things? And that's where I'd say the majority of people need the most help is, they're dealing with anxiety, with depression, with PTSD and all these.
Are you talking about me again?
Not specifically.
Feels like it.
But, how can you talk about eating a proper diet and going to the gym and doing things to care for your mental health when you're already at such a low place in your mental health? It's like, you got to get that out of the way first before you can even begin to talk about these other things. So yeah, it didn't turn out to be what I expected it to be, I guess.
Me either. And I'm glad for this evolution in your career, because I remember in the beginning, like you said, it was a lot of diet and nutrition and this and that. And I remember specifically sitting in the parking lot of the grocery store with you. And yeah, you're over there laughing and actually crying in the parking lot because I was struggling so much with getting over the mental health portion of this when we were trying to figure out. I deal with a lot of things. I'm sure we'll get into that too. But sitting in the parking lot and crying because I was so frustrated with you, I love you, and myself, because I didn't realize I had all this stuff going on. And as you have come into your own in this, and as you have progressed, it's really become easier to,
My methods have gotten a little better.
I say, to deal with you. Because everybody goes on, how you're so great. Da, 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 da. I'm like, live with them. It's a little different. But in the beginning, it was very hard. And I'm glad that you have found ways to um come at things better, and you have found all these different areas in here and stuff. And it's not what it is. It's not just nutrition and diet, because that is so hard just to tackle when you've been doing things for, I don't want to age myself, 30 some years, plus years. It's hard to change those things, and you've become a little better about it.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I've learned more and more that for a lot of people, once you start addressing that mental health aspect, it's like things like eating better, taking care of yourself just kind of naturally fall into place. It's like
Mhm.
you don't even have to put much emphasis on it. Like if you're in a better place mentally, you're going to put yourself in a better place physically just because you feel better about yourself.
And that's true, because in the beginning, when we did an elimination diet, like a whole 30, plus a few things, just to figure out why I was having inflammation. The doctor was trying to say that I had rheumatoid arthritis, my mother has it, genetics, all that good stuff. And I didn't want to take medicine. So we approached it from that aspect, and not addressing the mental health is what made it so hard. Yeah, I had great physical outcome. I lost almost 25 pounds. Um, my body felt fantastic, but my mental health was shit, to be honest. It was, I think, worse than it was before, because I wasn't focusing on that. I was only focusing on um the nutritional part of it and what I couldn't have, and I wasn't coming at it in the right mental frame. And I felt fantastic, and then I felt like crap at the same time. It was very difficult.
You really hated me.
I did hate you. I did hate you, and I told you every day.
Oh, that was a good learning experience for me too. Um,
I'm the guinea pig. That's why I'm here.
absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I learned this new thing. Let's try it out.
And you wonder why. I'm like, what? Every time you come at me.
I think this is a good segue into kind of an introduction to the show and what my intention is for it. Um, so first the name, Esoteric Wellness, I think the wellness is pretty obvious, but we'll further define that in a little bit. But esoteric, so it probably brings up a lot of imagery for most people. This. Oh, I won't get into that, but
That's a different podcast.
yeah, yeah. But what it really means is knowledge that is hidden or kept from the general population. And so what I want to talk about on the show is really exactly that in relation to health and wellness. What knowledge isn't well known among, everybody that should be. Because I think, and we'll talk a lot more about this, but there's so much information out there, and so much of it is bullshit, to be honest, and wrong. And there's a lot of misinformation, and people they don't know where the hell to look. They don't know what is right, what is wrong. There's so much misunderstanding. So the real purpose of the show is what I want it to be, is just to get information out there to people that is accurate, that is current, and that's helpful. I want to clear up a lot of that misinformation about what works and what doesn't. And we're going to talk about things like new research that's coming out. There's this huge delay in medicine between new research coming out and when it's implemented. It's almost like literally a decade gap there, between what's new on the research end and what's actually being put into practice in medicine.
My own opinions on that, or they're trying to figure out how to make money off of it before they send it out.
I mean, some of it's understandable. You don't want to just jump to the newest thing just because it's new. But I think the delay is much longer than it needs to be, especially with things that are studied well, are safe, and there's really no risk involved in implementing it. But you ask the average doctor in practice, they're like, never even heard of it. So, we'll talk about things like that. We'll talk about things that are more maybe on the fringe. And I'm of the belief that science as a whole, if you want to look for where scientific leaps are going to happen, where new discoveries are going to be made, you got to look on the fringe. Now, not everything on the fringe is right. Not everything on the fringe is accurate. Some of it's make believe, some of it's pseudoscience, but I want to dig into some of those things, and not from a perspective that like everything on the fringe is right, but I think it's worthy of investigation. It's worthy of discussion, because some of the stuff going on the fringe of health and wellness right now is really interesting, and could be very, very promising. So I think it's worth a discussion at the very least. I also want to get like a number of guests involved in the show, get different perspectives, different practitioners to talk about what they do, that kind of thing. I'm very big in alternative wellness practices and techniques. I think a lot of it is just different methods to achieve the same thing, but we'll talk about things like that. We're not going to talk about mainstream health and wellness much in here, because it's boring and much of it is outdated. Much of it is misunderstood, and some of it's downright wrong and misleading. But that's my intention for the show. Anything you want to add, Megan? I didn't even ask you what your intention was.
My intention, like I said in the beginning, I think after giving it a lot of thought and not really wanting to do this, just one, because I'm nervous. I'm a delicate flower that's shy. Anybody who knows me knows that's a load of crap. But like I said, to bring a person from the outside, a person who deals with these things, maybe awareness, especially in women's health, that all the things we deal with as women, especially hormonal things and everything, and getting dismissed by doctors time and time again, or feeling like you're crazy, bringing that voice to this. And I guess if anybody, making somebody feel comfortable, if anybody hears this and feels like, man, I've been dealing with that, maybe I'm not nuts and I need to go a different route with this or see someone else for this, then so be it. If I can help with that, I'm there.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's interestingly a topic we'll discuss later today, but like how to get proper medical care in today's conventional medicine system. And especially as a woman, like you said, you've really got to be your own advocate in a lot of ways.
And then some.
You've got to scream the loudest to get the attention you need from doctors who just kind of, no, you're on your period, or it's just hormones.
Crazy because it's that time.
Yeah. A lot of these old ideas still very, very present in medical care.
And I personally dealt with some of those, currently dealing with some of that. It is a struggle. And when you do shout the loudest, like you said, and you finally get that segue and someone, it costs so much, to try to be your own advocate and see specific doctors for, whether it be functional medicine or whatever. Healthcare is very difficult to navigate. The healthcare field. And hopefully we can throw out some tidbits to make it easier for some people.
The only other things I'd like to mention is I like the idea of having a good deal of listener interaction. I haven't done it yet, but I'll set up like an email address. People can email in questions, topics they want to see discussed in the show. we might ask listeners to come on the show, who knows? But I definitely want that level of interaction. I want this to feel like you have some input, you have some say in the show.
I think some listener stories could be nice too. If we have a specific topic that we're discussing, if someone wants to write in and tell us their experience with that, or how they've overcome those issues, or dealt with things, or anything like that from people and their stories, I think is good too, that we can share to help others along the way.
Yeah. Everyone loves a good story.
Yes, we have lots of those.
So yeah, that's really the purpose of the show, the why we're doing this. I also have the ulterior motives of, maybe attracting some more clients and digging up business that way. But
I was just thinking money, but
but that's secondary. The whole reason I'm doing this as a whole is to help people, be healthier, be happier. So
he just needs somebody to ramble to, because I cut him off.
Ouch. So the first topic I wanted to talk about is kind of defining health and wellness in general, because that's going to be the tie back to every episode, right? Health and wellness. We should probably be clear on what that even means before we do that. So I'll kind of read the dictionary definition of health is the condition of being sound in body, mind, or spirit, or a measure of current state of mental or physical well-being. Okay.
On that struggle bus.
So you can kind of think of it as being like the absence of illness, the absence of disease, in just good condition, physically, mentally, spiritually. Okay. Yeah. And then wellness is defined as the quality or state of being in good health. So they're really two words that mean kind of the same thing. But it's often called health and wellness. I mean, they're kind of interchangeable, I guess, from a definition standpoint. But for me personally, when I think of health and wellness, it's definitely a more holistic perspective, right? It's not just physical health. It's not just the absence of disease. It's really, yes, physical is part of it, but it's mental health, it's emotional health, it's spiritual health. It's, I'm sure there's others, but what goes on in any one of these affects all the others. And this is something I've really started to understand from a scientific perspective, especially between the mind and the body, emotions in the body. There's very real physical effects from what's going on in your mind, and it's measurable, it's detectable. And this has really fascinated me in a big way. But, so when I think of health and wellness, that's really where I'm coming at it from. It's so much more than just diet and exercise, right?
Yeah. And we talked the other day when you mentioned, the mind and body connection and health and wellness. There were stories of hysterical pregnancies, or literally, I mean, you've heard your grandmother say, "Oh, Stay, you're going to worry yourself sick." It is a true thing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Also, I want to try to, eliminate this idea that there's some perfect vision or prescription for health and wellness. Like, if you do this list of things, you will be healthy, because it's so much more complex than that. And what works for me doesn't necessarily work for you or anyone else. We're all different genetically, mentally, physically. And when you take in those differences, that perfect prescription for health, it's different for each person. It's really unique. It's really personal. So we see it all the time. Follow this diet, do this, follow this exercise regimen, and you'll be perfectly healthy. It worked for me. Well, that's great, but that doesn't mean it works for anyone else. Right? So so much of this journey to better health and wellness is finding out what works for you personally, not what works for other people, because it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And I've learned more and more and more that it's complicated.
I've been there along that journey, and I'm usually the one feeling it. So
it's complicated. We try to make it sound so simple, so easy. Just do this and you'll be fine. You'll be better. You'll get better.
You mean those infomercials at night aren't correct?
No, not at all. Or I complain about it all the time. Like when we watch TV in the evening, every commercial is about a drug to fix something. And it's
I did count them one night. I think there was 4 in one commercial break.
Yeah. So what I really want to get across with the show is how to discover what health and wellness means for you, right? Because it really is a personal journey. It's a personal process. You can't find it externally. It's something you've got to find for yourself. And with that, I think is a good place to take our first break.
Good. I have to go to the bathroom. Too much coffee.
All right.
And we'll be back.
All right, welcome back. So now I wanted to get kind of into the meat and potatoes of this first show. Kind of our first topic of discussion is going to be why it's so damn hard to be healthy today. I think probably all of us would agree that it's harder than it used to be, right?
Absolutely.
So I've got a long list of topics to talk around, but kind of the first one is, we live in an information age. I think, you and I are probably the last generation to remember a time before the internet. We were quite young, but we still remember a time when you had to go to the library to learn something new, to look something up.
Dewey Decimal System. Right. I mentioned that the other day, and some young kids are in the salon. They're like, "Oh, what?" I'm like, "Oh God, hard catalog box? Nothing." Nothing.
Kids today have no idea. But we live in this information age where there's so much information out there and so much information that's so easy to get, a hold of. You really have the world's information in your pocket. And you would think maybe at first that so much information is a good thing. But I think when it comes to health and wellness, there's so much information out there that it really makes it a challenge to make sense of any of it.
It can be overwhelming when you have all this coming at you.
I mean, Google one symptom on the internet, and my God, you'll get 1,000 different
you're dying
results.
It's always you're dying. Don't worry about it. It's cancer and you're dying.
Yeah, and your natural negativity bias is going to lead you down that rabbit hole of, oh my God, I'm going to be dead tomorrow.
Absolutely.
When it's just a rash. Yeah. So, and two, there's so much information out there that's wrong. No one's policing the internet. I can post anything out there, say whatever I want, and no one's in charge of, no, you're wrong. You can't do that. I mean, I'm not saying anyone should be doing this, but how do I, as the consumer of this information, make sense of what's right and what's wrong? Because there's real way to know.
And if you have information put out, one of my favorite examples, which upsets me so much, is the doctor who published the papers saying autism was caused by vaccines. Ooh. And it was he fudged the papers like on purpose to prove a point, and they proved that he did it. And yet to this day, we still have people who are saying that vaccines cause autism. Now, am I saying that there is not cases of harm that vaccines have? If you have some underlying health concern that they didn't know about or whatever, sure. But this doctor specifically said they cause autism. And, with us having a son who's on the spectrum, it's so upsetting as a parent to maybe think, oh my God, did my choices do this to my child? And you have that information out there coming at you. It can be scary. It can be down.
They feed off that fear.
Yes.
Oh my God, I caused this.
Yes. As a parent, we beat ourselves up enough anyway. Am I feeding my kid the right vegetables? Am I doing this? Are they having the right this? And that, mind you, they're over in the corner eating their boogers anyway. But I mean, it is hard to.
That might be an interesting study to talk about. Something they've shown that eating boogers improves your immune system.
Well, yeah. Oh God. But like I said, as a parent, it is difficult enough to try to sift through what the first 10 links are on Google for what is the best for your child. And maybe 2 out of those 10 are false. We don't know. So that's, how do we get through that? How do we find what is right? I guess is the only word I can come up with, or right for you.
That's another goal, I think, of the show. I think I just thought of hearing you say that is, how do you tell what's right? How do you gauge information as being high quality of value and what's garbage? And I think, we're losing the ability generally as a society to really understand science. To make that determination, is this good science? Is this bad science? Is this study that the media, pulls one sentence out of context to grab onto your fear and just get you to click the link? How do you then go read that study? Because nobody does this anymore. Because this is a skill I think everyone should have, is go read the study. Don't read the article, read the study. And 9 times out of 10, you'll see that what they're mentioning from the study wasn't even the point of the study. It was taken way out of context, and the study was done terribly.
They would never do such a thing. Well, you just asked that one guy on Facebook who now is obviously a, infectious disease specialist now. He'll tell you all about it.
Right.
Gotta love this soapbox.
All these so-called experts that aren't reading the studies.
But his cousin had a thing. Don't worry.
Granted, reading these takes time, but we all want that instant, result. We all want to know now, but that's not the way it works.
I'm human. I'm the same way. I understand. You don't want to have to dig and sift and do all this and that. You just like to read that little quick headline and, oh, well, I'm guilty of it too. We all are.
And we'll talk about this in a little while, but a lot of what, we're told in the mainstream is, in regards to health and wellness, is based on pretty terrible science.
Yeah. And is that company who makes that thing paying them to do that research? And there's just so many underlying things that make it difficult to do that. So
that's usually when I read a study, that's the first thing I look at, is who funded it.
Who funds it? Is it a third party, unbiased, or is it that pharmaceutical company who makes this pill to do this thing and does, those results were great. Just don't read the fine print.
Exactly. And that kind of leads us to the next point. So much of the information out there is intentionally wrong. It's misinformation. It's trying to lead you a certain direction for less than ethical reasons. I hate to get in the mode of thinking that, it's some huge conspiracy and that stuff. I mean, that's fun to do, but I don't think it's that going on. I think, it's more financially motivated much of the time. For example, I know this is something that irritates you, but this whole idea that depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. There's no real science to back that statement up, yet we all believe it. We've all heard it. And when you look at who's been pushing that idea, it's the pharmaceutical companies that sell the medications they're prescribing to correct this so-called imbalance that really isn't even there.
And I've dealt with that personally, and I'm an open book when it comes to mental health, and I will be the first person to tell everyone that, yeah, I was on medication and I was great and I had never felt better, but in reality, I wasn't feeling anything. And if it works for somebody, if you need it to get through and to be better, cool. I will not, you know, down anybody's thing, but you and I had a bit of a row over it there for, a minute when you had mentioned that. And like I said, somebody who struggles with the depression and anxiety was like, excuse me, what do you mean? And there was a big learning curve with a lot of that. And still struggle a little bit being told that, oh, it's not you, it's just your brain's not quite right and it's fine. And we're going to, this will fix it. And it's easy. And okay, it makes you feel better. Right. And it's still a bit of a struggle.
Yeah. And it's not to say that these drugs don't have their place. I mean,
absolutely.
Being numb to your emotions is far better than being suicidal, for example, an extreme example, but that's, for a lot of people, a better place than where they're at without them. But this whole idea that we look at these drugs as the solution, and I don't think they're a solution to anything. They're a temporary way of relief to get you to a place where you can then start to work on the actual issues that are there.
Well, I remember when I first got on my medication, and I was on Celexa, citalopram, for anybody who, it is a combination, anxiety and depression. It was an SSRI. It was hard the first couple of weeks, the nausea, and that was something I learned. You have serotonin receptors in your stomach, not just in your brain. So when it gives you that cute little animation in the commercial, it shows those little circles bouncing around in your brain and how it helps with those. Well, those are in your gut too. And the nausea was about debilitating, but got through it and I felt great. In the beginning, it was a little weird, but after going through my journey with that, I then did come to realize that it wasn't something I wanted to do long term. Kyle and I talked about it quite a lot. And in the beginning, I would tell people, I will never not be medicated. I will never not be medicated. Like, this is awesome. Like, this has saved my life. And then I realized that, no, this is a stepping stone. This is a tool. And I have used that to get myself in a better place, to get myself mentally in a better place and work on that. And then I was able to wean off of it. And I'm not saying everybody is that way, but for me, that's what worked. And I did change my tune big time. Like I said, I would tell everybody, never going off this. I don't care. Like, this is great. And now I'm not. And I've been off since I think the end of last summer. And I'm functioning. Some days are harder than others, but as an overall, life is much, much better now than it was before I was medicated.
We kind of went on a mental health tangent there. But
I do that a lot. I will big advocate for the mental health.
So it kind of leads me to the next point I had, which is, going with the flow kind of seems to just inherently lead to poor health, physical, mental health, both. And when you think about it, like, even when we were children, we're in our 30s. In that span of time, growing up, I remember, there was only like a small number of obese children in school, and I was one of them for through middle school and into high school. I was the fat kid.
Thank you, prednisone. I was that child too.
Yes. But, there weren't that many. It was the exception. And it was either they had some, extenuating circumstance that caused it.
Well, like with us, we were asthmatics and lived on albuterol and prednisone.
Yeah, we were on a drug that greatly increased your appetite. Or they had some other reason, right? There were actually very, very few people that were just overweight because they overate, right? You had to go out of your way to be unhealthy in that way. And I'm using obesity because it's just easier to spot.
And it's a very rampant thing in our society nowadays as well. So,
and you go back even further in time, like another 30 years, there was like one or two fat kids in the school, maybe, if that. Like fat people were rare. And you go back a little further, like I've seen old photos of like sideshows and freak shows where there's a fat person they have in the sideshow.
Yeah, that was part of the sideshow. You had the tattooed lady,
Right.
The strong man and the very large whatever.
Right. And you look at pictures of that fat person in the freak show, they're like not that big. They're like, you can go to Walmart and see
a whole lot of
5 to 10 of people in that same size. So what the hell has changed in that span of time? It's too fast to be explained by genetics or anything like that, because that happens on much longer time scales. So it's almost done this complete reversal where before you had to go out of your way, you had to step outside the mainstream, step outside of society a little bit to be that level of healthy. And today you've got to do that same thing to be healthy. So what the hell is going on? Why is this changed so dramatically in such a short span of time?
I guess in my mind, I go to what hasn't changed. I think it's easier to break it down in that way. Society and life and folks in general and food, what hasn't changed?
Not much.
Exactly.
So I've got a long list of ideas, of aspects of what I think it's at play. Not an all-encompassing list by any means, but so the big thing is, I hear this explained sometimes is, well, there's just more food available. It's easier to overeat. And I mean, yeah, if you're comparing with like times during the Great Depression, that's absolutely true. You can't overeat when there's no food to eat. But, after the Great Depression, those several decades between then and now, there was plenty of food overall for most people, at least in this country. There wasn't a high level of malnutrition or starvation going on. So I don't think that really adequately explains what's going on.
Types of foods.
That's exactly where I was going. It's what we're eating. So, up until what? Probably the 1990s, it was pretty common still for a single income household where, I hate to get into gender roles here, but where the woman stayed home and she did most of the cooking. Going out to eat was, a treat, a rare occasion.
I remember going to the Pizza Hut. That was fancy back in the day.
Right.
That was our treat.
And, I even grew up in this kind of household for a while. And, my mom did work outside of the home for, I'd say, the majority of growing up. But there were times when she was home and she did, all the cooking, and we ate pretty decently.
Yeah, your mom can cook.
Yeah.
A lot. Her catchphrase when we first started dating was, "If you leave hungry, that's your own damn fault." Pretty sure she still uses it.
So that, I think, is one big thing, is we're not cooking at home nearly as often. And, what are you replacing that with? You're replacing that with quick convenience foods, processed foods. And these generally are not good for us. There's no way.
They taste so good.
Yeah. And what's changed in our lives to cause this? We're all working more. We're all busier. The average household today with two parents and
2.5 kids.
multiple children, my God, they never sit down and rest.
Well, and that's and also I think that's what I can also bring to this is the family aspect view as a mother and a wife and doing the home thing. Um, yeah, you each work, and then all the kids each have an activity or two after school. Everything's in curriculars, and then we all pile so much on top of us. It's difficult to have that time to make a nice dinner and sit down and feed your kids, and then have that conversation. How was school? That's a rarity, I think, nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, eating home cooked meals that are good for you is something we put a lot of effort into,
Yes,
and we still fail at it sometimes.
yes, we do. Yes, we do.
It takes a lot of effort. You got to sit down and plan meals. You've got to get to the grocery store to buy all this stuff, and you got to find time to cook it all, and then clean up the mess afterward.
And nobody wants to do that.
Right. All while both of us having jobs. We work later in the day, especially you. You work pretty late some days out of the week, and it takes a lot of effort.
And even as adults, we say kids have extracurriculars. You're involved in a couple different of your health and wellness things that you do. I have about 18 other things that I'm involved in, and now a podcast. And it is. I mean, you really have to, when we talk, on Sundays or Mondays, when we sit down and like, all right, we got a meal plan. We got to get to the grocery store or a click list, or we have to, what days are we doing what food? Because how late are we going to be? Are we doing a crock pot meal that day? Are we doing, there's so much planning and effort that goes into just feeding yourself on top of everything else.
Mm-hmm.
It's exhausting. I'm just talking about it, and I'm not even looking forward to the rest of the week now.
And then there's these convenient, super easy, very often cheap alternatives.
And now they even do the door dashing and the Postmates. They bring it to you even. That's even better. Before, the only thing you can get brought to your door was a pizza, which that's one of my guilty pleasures. I will be the first one. I'm a pizza slut. But now you can get anything fast right to your door. And there's no cleanup. Toss it in the trash and you're done. Why would that not be appealing to the average person who is burning that candle at both ends already?
Yeah, it's extremely appealing. And there is a great shortage of those convenient options that are healthy. Absolutely. There are some out there, but especially, we live in a small town in the Midwest where a healthy restaurant is unheard of.
Yeah, you're going to have to drive 20 minutes to the nearest bigger city. It's actually, I think, the second largest city in the state. And, to have something that is either vegan or gluten-free or...
That wouldn't do well here.
Oh, no. I think it actually may. It's just getting that jump start and getting people on board, because I think that mentality here, like you said, in a small Midwestern town is still meat and potatoes. And
believe it, meat and potatoes aren't that terrible for you.
That does sound, I'm really hungry.
No one has time to make it.
Hungry. No. Crock pots. That's where your Instapot.
The meat and potatoes you get from the fast food joint are not the same.
No, and it's difficult to find things of, stopping and thinking of what we have available to us in our small town as far as fresh, healthy foods. If you're not going to a sit-down restaurant, I honest to God don't think we really have anything available. What Wendy's has salads, but good God, what do they put on that?
Just don't read the ingredients of the dressing.
No. Oh, and that's where we'll get into his oil tangents. Just wait, guys. It'll get there. It'll get there. But they do have options like the what is it, the HelloFresh. By the way, if they feel like sponsoring this, HelloFresh.
What is that?
What is that?
I have no idea.
Where have you been? Good God. Okay, so basically it's a meal kit where you still have to cook it. They will
Oh,
send
see,
you-
already prepared.
yeah, no, not
All the
prepared.
ingredients are.
This one is a HelloFresh is where all your ingredients are in there. They send you every single thing, your spices, all your additives, and they're healthy meals. And then you can choose.
But I'm guessing they're incredibly expensive.
I don't know. I've heard I actually do have some friends who do some of those and they really do enjoy them. Now, a lot of them I think are more either single folks or just them and maybe a significant other. I don't know anybody who's done more the family portions, I think, which would something we would have to do, the three of us.
Not
But these-
something viable for, the family with 6, 7 children.
No, oh God, no. You'd have to get like four family sets. But that is an option that people do. They'll maybe you can order and have it 2, 3, 4 times a week. So you do have fresh food available to make. But still there comes down to we have to cook it. We have to have time to prepare. And then they do have meal things that do come already ready and they're healthy or whatever. I remember seeing the Nutrisystem growing up. There was always those.
But yeah, like I said, there are options
Yes.
more than there used to be.
Yes.
But I think another problem is there's a lot of options that are advertised as healthy that really aren't. You know, as we were walking back to the office here, I grabbed just one of the random snacks laying around, which is a granola bar, which, we're all told granola is healthy. It's good for you, right?
Fruits and nuts. And
Hey, it's superfood, right? Just reading the ingredients, whole grain oats, which we could have a whole debate whether those are actually healthy or not. That's probably a whole nother episode. Corn syrup, which is basically another term for sugar, and then sugar, so more sugar. Almonds, cranberries, which are probably dried and laced with sugar. Roasted peanuts, raisins, more sugar, rice flour, vegetable glycerin, canola oil, which we'll have a whole episode on industrial seed oils.
I cannot wait. That has been the bane of my existence for months.
Terrible for your health and everything. Fructose, not good for you. Cornstarch, soy lecithin, what the hell is that? Salt, barley malt extract, baking soda, natural flavor, which we have no idea what that really is. Vitamin E. Yeah. And that's, some of those ingredients are healthy, sure, but it's all held together with sugar. And, sugar's gotten a pretty bad rap recently. Now, sugar is one of those things like almost everything, we need it, but in moderation.
And it's a naturally occurring thing. Look at your fruits and,
Right. You would die without sugar. That's basically what your cells run off of. That's the fuel that fuels our bodies, but we eat way more sugar than we need. Anyway, that'll be a whole nother episode as well, probably. But yeah, food that's advertised as healthy and convenient and quick. If it comes in a package or a box, I'm skeptical. If it's advertised as healthy, I'm even more skeptical.
Well, and that's like when you said sugar gets a bad rap. I remember, and you can remember too, because we're in that age group, like we said, in the 80s and 90s, everything was fat free. Everything was fat free. Fat is bad, But I try to, and like I said, working in a hair salon, of course, there's a lot of women and we have a lot of discussions. And, some of the girls are trying to we're being healthier and watching what we eat. And we'll discuss it. And well, it's fat free. Okay, well, or it's sugar free or what have you, whatever free is in at the moment. And I'll say to them, okay, but what are they replacing it with? It is a chemical shitstorm that they're putting in that thing to make it taste like food. Because when you take something out, it's going to be missing that and it's not going to have that flavor. So there, you advertise it's fat free, it's sugar free, it's this. Okay, but what are they putting in to make it taste, to be palatable?
It's all marketing.
Yeah.
I've seen water recently advertised as gluten free.
Yeah.
It's like, who the hell's putting gluten in water?
Yeah.
but that whole debacle on the demonization of fat is fascinating because it's all built upon a single scientific study that was so poorly done. Um, and while they were putting together this food pyramid that drove all that, we all remember the food pyramid.
The base was the grains, the top was sugar.
Fats for the devil. While they were putting that together, it came out that the science was shoddy, and they didn't care. They just went ahead with it. Well, we've invested too much time
and money. So real quick, circling back, I just pulled up this picture on my phone. My best friend sent me this photo of this water that her daughter has. And on the back, it's water. It says all natural, gluten-free, non-GMO, electrolytes, BPA free, vegan, soy-free, keto-friendly, kosher, and sugar-free. This is water, folks. If we're to the point in our lives in this world that we have to label, now don't get me wrong, gluten is a serious topic for some people who have celiacs. I know people who have celiacs, but it's like we have to put kosher and all these different things on water. Like it's all about a quick read. It's all about a label.
Exactly. So another big aspect of all this is our lifestyles has changed dramatically.
We've had that conversation.
And this is really what's driving the allure of all these convenience foods, right? Because we're all working longer hours. We're all commuting further to work. We're all engaged in other extracurricular activities all the time, much more often than we were before.
Timmy has 18 things to do after school today, so we have to make sure he gets there.
We're all more stressed out. Our mental health has been on a steep decline in the last, probably 2, maybe 3 decades. And much of it's due to this change in our life. We live differently than we used to. We used to live much slower. Things are slower paced. We didn't have all this shit going on all the time. And you throw on top of that things like the media that's always scaring us to death about every little thing around the world. Social media that does the same thing, that constantly has us comparing ourselves to everyone else, keeping up with the Joneses to the nth degree. All this takes its toll. And when you're stressed out, when you're in a bad place mentally, you don't have the extra energy to cook a healthy meal at the end of the day.
And it's no wonder we're all medicated.
So there's a lot more going on than just the diet, but a lot of the other things going on are pushing us much stronger into this unhealthy diet. And some of the amazing things I've learned is like what's going on with our mental health affects our physical health just as much, if not more, than like the things we eat. We'll probably do a whole series on like autoimmunity and things like that, but what's driving a lot of these chronic diseases of today is inflammation. And I've learned that our emotional mental processes can cause just as much inflammation as what we eat. So it's like we're all getting worse from both ends. And it's really taking its toll. So this is, I think, a big part of it. But another part I want to talk about is the limitations of conventional medicine. So our healthcare today is garbage. Well, I'm not going to say no. That's not accurate. It's not garbage. They do amazing things. We have some amazing technology in medicine today, but the problems that it's being faced with has changed a lot. And these new problems that healthcare is faced with, it doesn't know what to do about. It falls on its face. So if I fall and break my leg, take me to the hospital. That's the best place for me. We've spent hundreds of years learning how to treat, acute traumatic injuries and things like that. But when it comes to things like chronic disease from diet and lifestyle problems, modern medicine doesn't know what the hell to do. And quite honestly, what they do makes it worse much of the time.
Been there, done that. Been there, done that. I had to see, well, just a small example. When I first started dealing with my inflammation, I wasn't sure what was happening. I woke up one day and felt like a few of my joints had been hit with a sledgehammer. Like literally woke up and was in pain. I go to my GP, my general practitioner, and I see them. And, we do some tests and, oh, you've got some elevated, this, that, and okay, cool. Here's some medicine right off the bat. All right. Well, and then I had to go see ortho, and then I had to go see this person, and then I had to go to physical therapy. Like you just get shuffled down.
How many of those people are talking to one another?
That's exactly what I was getting to. They can read your chart, and then they have me and my information. I'm not a doctor, but you just get booted from one to the other, to the other, to the other, and it's not, nobody's meeting as a whole and discussing, oh, well, I noticed this with this person, or I know they take notes, but sometimes not everything, I don't know. It's so frustrating as a person who has dealt with inflammation being your topic and not getting any clear, the end result was you need to go to rheumatology. And
not my area. Go see someone else.
Exactly. Go to this, go to this, go to this. And seeing what people deal with, my own mother included, and I have quite a few clients who deal with chronic inflammation and rheumatoid arthritis or different types of arthritis. And the stories and knowing what they go through personally, dealing with the stuff and the frustration and dealing with the doctors and the meds and the thises and the that's is, why would you want to do that? Why would I want to put myself through that,
Yeah. Yeah, it's this old paradigm of looking at health or people in general as machines. It's entirely focused on the physical, first of all. And we break up each part of the body into separate systems. And so if we have a heart problem, we see a cardiologist. If we have a foot problem, we see a podiatrist. But who the hell is looking at the whole body as a whole? Nobody is anymore. You used to go see, your local doctor. He was the only guy in town. He knew everything about you. He dealt with all your issues simultaneously. He knew what was going on.
The man birthed you, usually. It was the same guy who birthed you and treated you all the way up through.
Right. He saw you as a person, as a whole system. Now, and they have so many patients. They don't know who the hell you are. They don't know your history. They don't remember last time you were in most of the time. I remember reading a study. They looked at like the average time a doctor spent with each patient. I think it came out to 8 minutes. What the hell can they find out about you in 8 minutes? Can they listen to anything you tell them in 8 minutes?
Scan that chart.
No. They walk in the room. What's your primary symptom? Okay, here's a prescription for a drug. Who the hell's investigating why you're having that symptom? Nobody.
It's Band-Aids.
And
it's Band-Aids.
I haven't always done this. I come from a background of engineering, of industrial health and safety. I worked in the business corporate environment. And in that environment, nearly every freaking meeting, there's a discussion about what's the problem, what's the root cause of the problem, and what are you doing about it? Root cause, corrective actions. Okay. This is how the business world runs. Now you come over here to medicine. Well, what's the root cause of my symptom? No one cares. No one bothers to look. We'll give you a medicine to band-aid your symptom and manage it. But no one cares about root cause. And this just blows my mind. Like, how can you treat people this way? you're not treating them, first of all.
And not to mention the money you're spending in the process, going to each of these specialists and having all these tests ran. I've personally done that too. I'm just the big example, I think, in this show. If there's an example you need, look at me, I got it. But going to my doctor with a pain and then being sent to this specialist and having these labs ran and then that, and then coming back to my regular doctor and then going back to the money we spend in the process. And don't get me started on insurance companies, because my God, that'll be a whole thing in itself.
We'll get into that.
Oh, but it's so expensive in that way to be healthy as well, when you're trying to figure out what's wrong.
But no one's actually looking for what's wrong.
And you're still spending money in the process. It's a vicious cycle of money and stress, and this is just ugh.
So, I mean, like diabetes, for example, it's pretty common nowadays. We know what causes it. It's an overactivation of our insulin system, and it eventually wears out, stops working, and it gets overactivated by what we eat. We know this. This is proven. It's no mystery. Yet, when you contract diabetes and you go to the doctor, what do? They give you,
For sure.
they give you, okay, your insulin system's not working. So they give you insulin. You're just replacing that. You're doing that for your body. But why aren't we addressing what caused it? Because diabetes, believe it or not, is 100% reversible. If you correct the root cause, it goes away. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we doing that?
It's something. How many times have we been to the doctor? And like I said, harkening back when I went in for my inflammation, they gave me a medication for the inflammation to tolerate it until, I went to see the next specialist. And I think it was, honest to God, briefly mentioned at the end, maybe, I don't know if it was, no, this has been some time ago. I don't know if it was like diet or watching your sugar intake. It was like literally the last thing mentioned. And it was just a quick little blip. Well, then I come home, you and I are discussing it and doing some digging. And it's like, my God, look at these foods that are reactionary and cause inflammation. And why is that not the first thing being addressed? And then this is when we, as mentioned in the beginning of the show, we went on the elimination diet and it went away.
Amazing.
Every bit of it. My weight came down. The inflammation was gone. I mean, it was to the point where I would get home from work after being on my feet all day long in the salon, working with my hands all day long. It got to the point where I couldn't even braid hair. I mean, it was so my hands would be so painful. I couldn't open caps on bottles. Like my grip strength was gone. And then after going through this simple, and I say simple lightly because, we're discussing how difficult. No, it was not. But one of the most, I guess, the easiest thing to think of, and it was gone.
Right.
But yet we're going to throw a pill at it.
But none of the doctors talked about that with you.
Nothing. It was literally a brief mention. Watching sugar intake, I believe is what it was literally the last one. And that was it.
And is anyone realistically going to take that little blip of information and make change in their life?
How many times do you go to the doctor for, it doesn't matter what it is, and after you get your labs, like, oh, a little diet and exercise would, help with that, but, and then da-da-da-da. It's always said, and I think that's the problem, is it's said so frequently and then nonchalantly that we don't even consider it.
Improving your diet, exercising more is hard. Change is hard in general, and they give you zero resources to help you with that. And it just, again, it blows my mind. So I'm coming at this, I was trained in a functional medicine perspective, and this is a method of medicine's well outside the mainstream. It has a more root cause, full person approach. And totally forgot where I was going with this.
I feel like that's going to be a thing with this.
Anyway, so again, this approach really resonated with me because it acknowledges the root cause first of all, and it's really the goal.
And it treats the person like a person and as a whole.
And when you go to a functional medicine clinic, the focus, no, I don't care what you go in there with, they're going to focus on diet and lifestyle because that's the root of all this and health and wellness in general. How are you living your life? Because that's going to affect your health outcome.
I have a question as a layperson. When did functional medicine really kind of become what it is? Like because I can't imagine, in discussing history and how it was growing up, I can't imagine like in like the 80s and 90s. I'd never even heard of this until you had really gotten into this. I mean, I've heard of what's the word? Coming to that later. Integrative, like your doctors, like your integrative medicine. And again, not until more recently. But when did functional medicine even really become a thing? Like, I think we can almost pinpoint that when things really started pivoting and our lifestyle started changing, as because if there's a change, there's a need, things show up.
Right. I'm not sure when it started in its modern form, but it's always been around in some way or another. I'm not sure who coined that term and when, but it goes way back in forms like naturopathic medicine, for example, which is very, very similar. They're a little more heavily focused on like herbal medicines and things like that, but still a very holistic approach. And before modern medicine, I mean, that was the only approach, right? Because we didn't understand the physical goings on in the body like we do today. And I think that was the real transition away from this type of medicine, was when we started getting more scientific about it. We started understanding what was physically happening in the body. Right. And we started looking at it solely from that perspective. It gave us a ton of knowledge and understanding, but we lost what we had known before in a lot of ways. So it's almost like a return to old knowledge.
And I think, and I had mentioned this earlier and not during recording, I think that's what our generation is doing. The millennials, and there's, what's the one after us? I'm old, the Gen Xers. Is that right? Z. No, X. X is before Z. Look at us. God, we are getting old. I think we're trying to take it back to some basics and take control of things again. And I think this is how we're doing it, or one of the aspects of how we're doing it.
Yeah, I think I like functional medicine too, because it brings back a lot of that old knowledge, that old perspective, that old paradigm, but it ties it in with modern science. So there's a lot of science happening in functional medicine, and we're very scientifically oriented. So let's say you went to a functional medicine doctor with autoimmunity. The typical first session, and this is one of the big problems with it, is they're not really accessible to the average person, because your first appointment, first of all, you're going to get a lot more than 8 minutes with that doctor. Your first set appointment is probably going to be an hour or more.
That's shocking in today's.
To sit and talk with the doctor, not the nurse, the doctor. Okay. He's going to dig into your whole history, what's going on. He's going to ask a lot of questions. But they're also going to do a shit ton of labs. Okay. Because they want to know what the hell's going on. We don't want to waste time trying this. Oh, that didn't work. Let's try this. Which you seem to get in conventional medicine. This is trial and error, So we're going to do a ton of labs. This is probably going to cost you $3,000 to $5,000. But when you look at it long term, it's going to cost way, way less. Because, yeah, you're going to spend all that money up front, But guess what? In a couple of weeks, we're going to know exactly what's wrong and exactly what to do about it. We've identified root cause and we'll come up with a solution. In a matter of months, you'll be better. Versus conventional medicine. Yeah, you might just have to pay your copay up front. It's going to cost you less up front. But over time, when your symptoms never really go away, you just have to take this medication the rest of your life. How much does that cost in the long run? And your quality of life never really fully recovers.
And that's why I've never understood within the healthcare system is I understand being healthy doesn't make money, but if we're never getting better and this and that, that comes down to the people and what we're paying in our taxes and just all sorts of crap. It's so expensive. It's so expensive to be unwell. And I've just never understood that. It just doesn't make sense as far as us as a society. It's a burden on people physically and financially and mentally. It's taxing in so many ways. So.
All right. Well, I think we've reached our next break point, and I think we'll come back and dig into kind of the financial complications in healthcare. So we'll see you soon. Welcome back. So we were talking about kind of the costs of conventional medicine. And I think in a big way, the costs are out of control. I think we've all noticed the costs of our healthcare, the cost of our insurance going up. And I would say the quality of care we get for that amount of money has gone down. You remember that last engineering job I had, and the health insurance that they offered was just horrendous.
And for the amount that we paid per month was disgusting.
It's like $800 a month.
Yeah, it was almost $800 a month for subpar compared to the insurance that we had.
Yeah, I had some pretty good insurance previously, and it was, that was still like $500 a month, but.
And it had good coverage. And that just shows you, depending on what you can afford as far as insurance, or if you can get insurance, or if your job even offers insurance. My job does not offer insurance. I work in a small hometown salon, and that's not an option. And, that directly correlates to, what kind of healthcare you're going to get. If you can afford it, or what you have, or what they will cover, or what your insurance will approve. And to me, that's sickening. To have that come down to what some people behind a desk that have never even met you as a person or heard your healthcare issues. That should be something between you and your doctor, period. That across the board, that goes for so many things. I'll stay off that tangent.
I think you need to understand too that, from those people who make that decision, their job is to get out of paying for shit.
Yeah, that's absolutely what it is.
It's their job. That's their perspective.
They want to take the most non-invasive way first. It's like, well, you had back surgery. How many years ago? Good Lord, 15 years ago. And I know. And, when we first went through it, they're like, oh, we're going to do some physical therapy. Then, oh, we're going to do some injections. And then, oh, we're going to do some more injections. You get 3 rounds of injections because that's the most you can have. And then finally, I understand wanting to try to take the path of least resistance. But sometimes it doesn't feel like that. It definitely feels like we don't want to spend the money on you.
That's exactly what it is.
And it really sucks as a human being to be brushed off like that. And finally, after how long did it take to get you the help that you truly needed in the very beginning? As your back problems progressed.
At least a year.
I say it was about 1.5 years. And it just progressed and got worse because you were already at that point to where there was so much damage and it just kept going further and further. And I saw that and saw how it became. And yet we're just going to keep, trying these little things first before they finally have to give in and do what's necessary.
Yeah. And the whole insurance idea and system, because that's really what's driving the healthcare you get. And that's why, any other form of healthcare that's outside of mainstream typically doesn't even deal with insurance. Functional medicine is a prime example. There are very few functional medicine clinics that will bill your insurance. They just don't want to deal with it because they don't want to be told how to treat their patients. Because when they send a bill to insurance for, 30 some labs and the first appointment, the insurance company freaks out. They're like, none of this is medically necessary
To them. To them.
So that's what's driving the healthcare you receive. What the doctor is able to do is your insurance.
I remember when, we first got married, you were in the military, and we had TRICARE. And it was so strange to me as a person who, my parents, we were lucky enough to have insurance and have what we needed growing up. And to walk into the doctor on base and then not have to pay anything or do anything. I'm like, wait, that's it. I can just go. That was a very odd experience going from regular life to that and how different it worked.
Yeah. And, if something doesn't change, the cost of healthcare is increasing. The amount of healthcare needed is increasing with all the chronic disease we're dealing with. Our health is getting worse. At some point, this is going to bankrupt the country. It's where does it stop? The need for it's going up, the cost of it's going up. It's just a self-reinforcing cycle. If something doesn't happen, it's going to break.
But that's not a right now problem. That's a down the road problem that we're not gonna look at.
Anyway, so like that last job we were talking about, the horrendous insurance offering, it would have costed us like almost $10,000 just to cover the premiums. We're not even talking about the out-of-pocket costs, what is it, like $3,500 deductible.
And by the way, we didn't have eye or dental in that.
Right.
That was just basic medical. That wasn't even any of the other things that can affect.
So we went without insurance for a while, over a year. And in that year, we probably spent, I don't know, $5,000, maybe $6,000 in medical costs.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. What is the benefit? I mean, and the real benefit is if you have something tremendously, happen in your health, like you have a major accident or you get cancer, treatments for these things can cost millions of dollars. And that's where insurance has its role. But I think we've lost sight of that. We're using insurance to pay for our everyday healthcare, our yearly checkups and things like that. And it's not really what it's for.
Well, an example, I have a client and they have leukemia and their cost monthly is $18,000 for a medication. Now, I believe they said it was through Pfizer has a program that you can apply for. And it's something along the lines of you have to be more than 500 times the poverty level, which let's be honest, the poverty level where we live is very, very low to qualify for this. And luckily they qualified, but $18,000 a month for a medication to keep you alive. What is the cost of your life? What is it worth? Whatever the insurance company tells you.
previous work I've done in industrial health and safety, we had to deal with workers' compensation, which is through an insurance company. I was absolutely disgusted by those meetings. Someone got injured on the job. It's covered by workers' comp, but the routes they take, the loopholes they try to find to not pay for someone's injury, it's disgusting. Oh, it's their fault. It's their fault they fell in the machine that cut their leg off. It's like, oh my God.
They try to find every way possible to not.
And when they started getting into the care they would pay for. Okay, so I think there was one guy that, he suffered a fall. He had all kinds of problems, back problems, neck problems. And the only care they would pay for is managing the pain with medications. They wouldn't pay for the surgery he wanted. And it blew me away. It's like, why? That doesn't make any sense.
I feel like in the long run, and now of course, I don't know the cost of the surgery or the cost of the medication.
Well, you know what their reasoning was? He was 70-some years old. So it would cost they were expecting him to die in the next 10 years, essentially.
Yeah.
So in that span of time, the drugs would be cheaper than the surgery.
Yeah. What's the?
Yeah, his quality of life had no play in the decision at all.
Who cares?
Right. How much is it going to cost us to pay for it?
It's disgusting.
Right.
Absolutely disgusting.
One of the many, many reasons I got out of that line of work.
Yeah. And that's the thing, seeing your health physically and mentally and how it was on you, and the difference of seeing you then versus now, it just shows that that's another aspect of our lives, what our jobs and how much time we devote to that versus ourselves and the need that we feel that I have to do this. Well, let's be honest. How many of us are really expendable in our jobs and they can be replaced pretty easily, but yet we feel like this is just something that is dire and we have to dedicate so much of ourselves to this, when in reality, our job most likely does not care about you. And God forbid if something happens to you, like you just stated, at that job, they don't care. They're going to do everything they can to not take care of you.
Yep. It's what I found is the higher up the ladder I went in the business environment, the more disgusting the view was.
It's like they throw money at you the higher you go to cushion that. Like, don't get me wrong, I quite enjoyed that portion of this, but yes. And yet then you come home like a zombie and angry and burnt out, and then the family suffers, and it's just a whole thing. I mean, it's the sick cycle that we've gotten ourselves into, but yet success in that ladder that's the ultimate, goal in life, is to get all the way up there and be what? Miserable and depressed with crippling illnesses and depression, and yay, congratulations.
That's all I found up there. It wasn't fun. Like, screw this. So another topic I wanted to bring up is politics.
This is my favorite.
You have to promise me not to bring up the gas tax.
That has nothing to. Well, maybe I could totally find a way to.
It has nothing to do with it, so leave it alone.
Okay.
So for those of you that don't know, Megan has dabbled in local politics here recently, and I have no patience for politics at all.
This is his second year, and during this, I ran for public office last year, and I am running again this year, and elections will be in November, and so vote for me. Politics, this is not somewhere where I saw myself. And if anything, if you would have met Kyle and I, maybe 10 years ago, you would probably consider him more that person than me. But getting into this and seeing how things are touched by politics and how it shapes our world, it's eye-opening in good and bad ways. But it's the politics of things. This is where I have my rants. You have yours and I have mine. So
Yeah. So politics in relation to health and wellness is a lot of the health information out there that we're fed is politicized. Some form of government is controlling what information is put out there. Especially when you think of things like the food that's fed to our children in schools. That's a government entity determining that. Food fed to people in prisons and other institutions, hospitals, all this stuff is determined by the government in some way, and
daycares. That's another one too.
The science that they use to determine what's a healthy way to eat is determined more by lobbyists in Washington than it is by actual science.
If you could see my face right now.
And we brought up the food pyramid earlier. That was lobbying that got that pushed. And we all grew up with that. And it was horribly, horribly wrong. We finally moved away from that, but there are other things in the works to replace that are just even worse.
There's always another villain, right? Isn't that the way it always comes down to? There's always another bad guy or another mobster, or whatever it was. When the one guy falls, there's always one more right behind him, just waiting to swoop in and take that spot.
Right. But, I don't think it's like some small group of people up in, some high tower somewhere making these decisions to manipulate this stuff. But it's really the capitalistic system we built. It's all about money. If I'm a major food corporation and I can get Washington to force people to eat the products I make, I have a serious financial gain to make from that. So yeah, I'm going to pay lobbyists to go to Washington and try to make that happen. I'm going to fund scientific studies that are going to show that my food's healthy.
It's not biased at all.
Economic sense. And even within a corporation, I've seen this. It's not like one person's making these decisions by themselves. Each person within one corporation has their little slice of the pie. They have their little perspective, and they're making decisions based on that alone. But when it all comes together, it seems malicious. It seems like nobody has our best interests at heart. And this is where I think we need somebody looking at the big picture and saying, whoa, that's probably not the best way to go here. Let's look at what's best for society, for the people as a whole, not just for these small group of people to make money. So again, I don't think there's some massive conspiracy going on. I think it's just a result of the system we built as we designed it without certain checks and balances.
All I can think of, it's like the Lorax. He speaks for the trees. We need a Lorax to speak for the people. Yeah. And our well-being and what we truly need. And that's part of the reason, I'll get on my little thing here, why I want to be involved in local politics. Most people look at it like, oh God, why would you want anything to do with that? Because if people with intentions, good intentions, and trying to do better if they don't do it, who's going to? And how are we going to actually make those changes that we're speaking of that need done? Because you don't have the patience for it, so I guess I'll do it.
I do not. I do not. I don't know how you do it. And I get asked sometimes, what's the solution? What's the fix? And I really don't know. There's so many separate broken parts of the system that need corrected. Yeah, you can start fixing them one by one, but how long is that going to take?
By the time you get to the end, you got to come back around and start again.
Right. What's going to get broken after you fixed it, a decade later? And what scares me is I think, the only way to really fix it all at once is to burn it all down. And that usually comes with a great deal of violence and war and things like that, which, aren't good either. So I don't know what the answer is.
Look at history. How else has great change, good, bad, or indifferent, occurred without some sort of big, I don't know. I guess we just try to do the best we can for ourselves and help your neighbor a little bit and try to raise some good people.
Well, part of the solution I see as a possibility is getting people to a place of understanding where they can just take care of this stuff on their own. They can remove themselves from the system, not have to rely on the system. They can make healthy choices. They can understand the science. They can understand what it takes to be healthy and just do it. Waiting on the system to do it for them is probably not going to work out.
No.
But yeah, I don't know how to fix the system. I really don't.
Like I said, unless it's starting from scratch.
But yeah, did I bring up in discussion at all this new thing, the food compass?
No, not.
No. So it's kind of the same idea as the food pyramid was. What they did, they ranked, a long list of foods based on their so-called healthiness. They gave them a score.
I remember this conversation a while back.
Yeah. And I looked at this thing and I saw like how they were ranking these foods. And it's like, that can't be right. Like Lucky Charms are healthier than ground beef, for example. It's like, no, they're not. Any idiot could see that. Like all these processed convenience foods are way at the top, like where they don't belong, right? And so I read an article that was digging into who funded it. And lo and behold, who funded it was primarily food corporations who made these products. And there was a direct correlation between how much they funded and how highly ranked their products were.
It's like how well your student does in college by how much mommy and daddy donate.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, God.
And even worse, I started reading their methodology of ranking, and it was just terrible. Like not real science going on there.
And that's the thing. That's a piece of information, something easy to look at, something easy to understand that you put out for the average American to look at and be like, oh, well, I mean, if the science says, then oh my God, it must be. And here we are chowing down on cereals and box God knows what to get us through our lives now.
And there are lobbyists in Washington right now trying to push that to be, a source of guidance for dietary decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not.
I hope that our general public would have enough common sense. And I feel like that term needs to be changed because common sense is not common nowadays, to really understand that that is not right. Like something about that this is not okay. I would hope. But look at some of the things we have warning labels on. So,
Yeah. So it just blew my mind how, like, I think even the average person could look at that and say, something's not right.
I would hope so. I know at one point I've seen it after the food pyramid, there became another pyramid, but it was sliced vertically rather than horizontally. And it kind of broke it down that way, like moderation, equal bits of this, that, and whatever. And then I know after that, a picture of a plate came out and like one half of the plate was vegetables. The other half was like your starch and your meat, which I can kind of back that. You need to get your daily allotted serving of your vegetables and things like that. It's hard to get what we need every day. Um, where the hell did this ridiculous compass come into play?
Anyway, so I wanted to raise the question, are all these issues new, or is this kind of the way it's always been?
I think there's always been, like I said earlier, in the 80s and 90s, it was fat free. And now we are pushing for good, healthy fats, avocado and olive oil and coconut. And everybody puts avocado on everything, freaking toast, and you spend $10 for it. But I think it's just what is the hot topic at the time. There's always been something that has been demonized, and then we try to change it and do this and do that, and whatever comes from it comes from it. But I think it's always been that way.
Yeah,
It's just changed as what it is over time.
I think in regards to like the confusion and misinformation, that's always been there. There's always been arguments about what's healthy and what's not. Um, the political issues that's always been there.
Yeah.
The quality of healthcare, I think, well, it's obviously degraded as we go back in time to a point. But I think, maybe in the more distant past, it was better than today. But I think in modern times, the healthcare right now is probably the best it's ever been in some regards. I think what's really changed is what healthcare is being faced with.
And I think a lot of it comes down to, like you said, the politics of it. We do have lobbyists pushing for things. We do have this, we do have that. I think it's outside influences. I think there are really genuine people in health and science and things who want to see things progress and change and for the better, but it's those outside entities playing on it that change the things. So
I think too, the level of influence that these aspects have on our lives is much greater today than it's ever been. Just think, 100 years ago, most of us were subsistence farmers, and what happened elsewhere in the world didn't really matter. Weren't even aware of it in a lot of ways.
we didn't have TikTok back then.
We just ate what we could grow and find, and that was it. We're so connected today that, all these things have a much bigger impact on our lives. And I think that's another big aspect of what has changed. So all this has been a lot of doom and gloom. And I don't want this show to just be that, obviously. So is there any good news out there today? Is there any change happening in a positive direction?
As a woman, it's a little hard to speak on, my healthcare and how that's been affected. That's a whole nother doom and gloom podcast. Yes, it is. Slowly and surely. But look at, like you said, the advancements in healthcare. You strip away the politics of it, you strip away the lobbyists, you strip away the insurance. What we can overcome nowadays. Now, what is it? The rates of cancer went from 1 in 8 to like 1 in 3 now. Having cancer, yes. But so many people, like back when we were kids, you heard the word cancer and it was like, oh, it was almost a death sentence, Nowadays, it's like, it's still a scary thing, obviously. But I think the survivability is so much more today than what it was even when we were younger. And before that, we can do so much more. And that is the positive. Technology in science has done so much. And that is the good thing. It's just how we access those things without all these blocks.
Yeah, when you look specifically at the science that's happening, the research side, not so much what's being practiced, but there's a lot of very interesting, very exciting developments in the works on, the things we're struggling with right now, chronic disease, things like that, mental health.
Yep. Autism. Look how far we've come in understanding that on a spectrum. It's autism spectrum disorder now. It's not just, they're autistic or they have Asperger's. I know they're trying to phase that out because that's kind of that the connotation of where that started. But we understand these things so much more than we did. It used to just be like, oh, the weird kid, or you would put them away in a home, even mental health. Oh, she has the what did they call it? Hysteria. She's got the vapors. She's got the vapors. Put her away, give her a lobotomy. Thank God we don't do that crap anymore. But I don't know. As far as I know, we don't. But I think the understanding is a big one. How we do understand things, like you said. Mental health is a huge thing. And somebody who struggles a lot with their mental health, getting rid of the stigma, it's still there. Don't get me wrong. It is still there. But we can talk about it without like flinching so much. That's the positives.
Yeah, we're better understanding what causes it. We're not doing anything to fix what causes it, but
Yeah. But knowing that it's not something that's just, ooh. I mean, look at AIDS in the 80s. I mean, they thought they would fully gown up just touching somebody with it. They thought you would contract it. Don't get me wrong, there are still people nowadays that have the ignorance of how these things are contracted, and and look at the lifespan of that. People who do have HIV and AIDS are living long, healthy lives, undetectable. There are good.
I think too, there's a growing movement in alternative wellness practices, techniques, methods, especially among younger generations. I think people are starting to become so fed up with conventional medicine, not correcting their problems, not listening to them, that people are looking elsewhere.
I think people are becoming fed up with the conventional world.
Right. Now, the places people are looking aren't necessarily the best, but they're starting to look elsewhere. They're starting to say, this isn't working. We need something else. So I think that growing movement and looking for different ideas, different things is positive for the most part. So, we're sitting right now in an alternative wellness center in Midwest Indiana. 10 years ago, that wouldn't have existed. No one would have been open to that idea, or a few people would have, but it's becoming more mainstream. It's becoming more accepted to approach health from a different perspective.
It's not just dirty hippies and witchcraft now.
Right. We still have those, but
oh yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I can identify as both.
So I think at some point we're going to reach a tipping point where, so many people are just throwing the bullshit of conventional medicine to the side that they're going to start to pay attention, and they're going to start to change because, it's financially driven, obviously, but they're going to start to change to meet what people are actually looking for. And you're starting to see some of those changes in some areas of medicine already. You mentioned integrative medicine earlier. That's a step in the right direction. There's still issues with that, but more holistic perspectives are coming into mainstream medicine, I think.
Well, and look at, as far as change over, the time. Now we have, like you said, psychedelics. We have cannabis. We have all these things that were looked at back in the day. You have your the war on drugs and all these things. And now we're realizing that, okay, maybe they weren't, we're using them in our healthcare nowadays. Some of these little Midwestern states we're still in haven't quite caught on, but we're getting there slowly.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm seeing change in the right direction. It's nowhere close to what it needs to be, but it's beginning. And I think that's maybe a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. It's not all bad, I wouldn't say. There's a lot of bad, don't get me wrong, but I'm beyond frustrated sometimes when I think about all this stuff. But there are good things happening.
It's there. We just have to shine that light on it. And hopefully, there are people who can be that positive voice against the misinformation and the negativity and start to open some eyes and ears and hearts to these things and continue to move in that direction as a whole.
All right. So I think that brings us to the end of what I wanted to discuss today. Are you feeling a little better about this project with me at this point?
Yes, it does. It does help. I guess once we kind of get into it and feeling how personal it is, and like I said in the very beginning, if I can help somebody who is having some of the same struggles or worries or whatever, and we can help them, then so be it. That's why I'm getting into politics. That's why I do the things I do, is to help people. And that this is just one more tool to do that, then so be it.
Yeah. And I think podcasting is such an easy way to do that. And it's such a popular thing right now that,
I
everyone's
love podcasts.
listening to a podcast anymore. And it's such an easy way to reach a large number of people.
See, when we get like a whole bunch of viewers now, and not just like, well, the none at the moment, but I can definitely like plug some of my favorite podcasts. Maybe I'll get a little shout out there. Hey, I have to have my perks in this too. Okay.
Yeah. Who knows where it'll go, but if nothing else, we'll have fun doing it. I think it's a fun project for you and I to do together. We don't do enough things together. I don't think we've been so busy with our own things that this will be fun.
And you get to ramble to me for hours about all your stuff.
I can lock you into the room and talk about these things.
It's not like at home where I'm just like, okay, I'm going to go check on dinner.
You have to engage in the conversation with me.
Boy.
Too, I want your input too. If there's something you want to talk about, you want to bring up.
The state gas tax?
Not that. It has to have a tie back to health and wellness.
It stresses me out, which is bad for my health.
Jeez. Not that.
I definitely have the things that I want to approach and topics I want to breach. And yeah, some of these, they can be controversial. Like it's what it is. Women's healthcare is a huge thing. And I feel like that's something I want to touch on. Mental health, again, still huge taboo to some people in some places. That is something I want to discuss. Topic heading back with, autism and what we used to think it came from, and living in the Midwest and how we treat those things and how we look at those things and how we're handling them now and growing with that now. There's a whole handful of things I want to get into. So I'll put my spin on it, not just you down there.
Not sure what you mean by that, but okay.
We'll see.
Yeah. And I think the next episode I have planned, because, it is the first thing everyone always asks me about. I think we're going to get into a conversation around psychedelics. The ways in which they're being used, how they work, what a psychedelic experience is like. This might actually be 2 or 3 episodes, but.
And a big thing, I think, is dispelling myths about them, and what people think they are. And again, going back to the war on drugs and back in the day, how, the devil's lettuce and all these different things and how they portrayed in the media and stuff. So that's going to be a big thing, I think, is working on what they're not.
Yeah, that's a topic that there's a ton of misinformation, misunderstanding around. And yeah, really just getting people to understand what's actually going on. And it's super interesting.
It really is.
a lot of new science with that being done right now, and it's really quite fascinating. So
That'll be a fun one. Yeah, we might have to definitely break that down into a couple. And then, again, if anybody, who may be listening has questions of what they would like to hear or share or anything like that, we definitely would want to hear that.
definitely.
I can sit at home and talk to you about this crap anyway. I want input from other people. So
Yeah, hopefully next episode I'll be able to announce an email address I've set up and ways to contact us. I know I haven't done any of that yet. I'm a little behind.
we're a work in progress. It's fine.
But yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for checking us out. And I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it somewhat useful. And we'll see you next time.
What do the kids say? Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. I got to set up ways to do it first.
Oh, we're getting there. Just, okay, think about it. Tell your friends.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.
Bye.